The Lord be with you.
Amen.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John. At that time, Jesus left Samaria for Galilee. For Jesus himself testified that a prophet has no honor in his native place. When he came into Galilee, the Galileans welcomed him, since they had seen all he had done in Jerusalem at the feast, for they themselves had gone to the feast. Then he returned to Cana in Galilee, where he had made the water into wine. Now there was a royal official whose son was ill in Capernaum. When he heard that Jesus had arrived in Galilee from Judea, he went to him and asked him to come down and heal his son, who was near death. Jesus said to him, "Unless you people see signs and wonders, you will not believe." The royal official said to him, "Sir, come down before my child dies." Jesus said to him, "You may go, your son will live." The man believed what Jesus said to him and left. While the man was on his way back, his slaves met him and told him that the boy would live. He asked them when he began to recover. They told him, "The fever left him yesterday, about 1 p.m. The father realized that just at that time Jesus had said to him, "Your son will live." And he and his whole household came to believe. Now this was the second sign Jesus did when he came to Galilee from Judea. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Cana plays a very important role in the beginning of Jesus' ministry. We're all very familiar with Jesus at the wedding feast being asked by his mother, or told by his mother, they have no more wine, and he sort of rebukes her. He passes her off. "Woman, what is that to me and to you?" And then she doesn't argue with him. She simply turns to the waiters and says, "Do whatever he says." And then we're familiar with that story of the miracle. Then he goes down to Jerusalem for a feast. And a few things happen there that cause him actually to be rejected by the leaders of the people. It was at that time that they began to plot to do away with him. So he came back to Galilee by way of Samaria. And that's when we had that Samaritan woman, that's such a long, beautiful story of her coming to faith through the word of Jesus, and the whole townspeople coming to faith through the word of Jesus. And then he comes back to Cana, where really he got started. And there are parallels in this healing of the royal official's son, because he asks Jesus to come down and lay his hands on him, and Jesus refused to do that. First of all, he kind of gives an answer that was sort of like what he gave to his mother before in Cana. It sort of seemed like, "Don't bother me. Unless you people see signs, you won't believe." But like Jesus' mother, this royal official persisted. He was not going to be rebuffed in his need. And his need, of course, was for his son, for his family. That was on the verge of being torn apart because of death. And so he stays. He holds his ground and says, Lord, please come. And then Jesus doesn't come. He doesn't go with him down to Capernaum. He says, go home. Your son will live. Now that took an act of faith, because that's not what the royal official expected. Actually, it took an act of obedience, because Jesus wasn't doing what this man expected him to. But he had enough faith to obey Jesus. So Jesus found a faith in him that he didn't find in most of the other people. The man left. He believed, and he left. And then his servants come and tell him, your son recovered from the fever. He will live. When did that happen? Turned out it happened at exactly the same time that Jesus told the royal official to go home. And the royal official obeyed him. So what we have is a twofold relationship between faith and the kind of faith that gives rise to obedience. And then it is through that faithful obedience that the healing happened. Time after time we find Jesus working through somebody's faith who will have enough faith to give obedience even when he doesn't see the outcome. And I think that's the kind of faith that is asked of us. Not simply to say, Lord, Lord, I believe in you, but to listen to him enough to allow his words to challenge our own hearts when we would like something different. That may be the meaning of faith. The meaning of Lent. We're halfway through Lent. And perhaps now is the time that we should ask ourselves, am I simply doing what I want to do during Lent? Or have I really been listening to Jesus to see what he wants? These Gospels give us plenty of opportunity to listen to Jesus. So our question really halfway through Lent needs to be, how well am I hearing the word of the Lord? And how well am I obeying?